can I create a space where the queers can come, and you already know when you come into this, it's going to be a really affirming place to discover spirituality.
Hi everyone, I'm Sunny from the Brightest Rainbow Ever. Welcome. I'm so happy today, and it's an exciting day. I have my second guest on the Brightest Rainbow Ever. Reverend Erika Allison is here. I'm so excited to have you. We're going to dive deep on topics of spirituality, queerness, religion, forming our identity related to our faith. So without further ado, I'm so excited to welcome you, Erika. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I have to tell you, so rainbows are kind of my thing. Like you can probably tell, I'm kind of into them, right? And so the fact that I'm getting to talk to the brightest rainbow ever makes me very happy today.
Yeah, we definitely vibe on the rainbow thing. I definitely wanted to take a moment to appreciate the background, because like I approve.
Thank you so much. I mean, both a neon rainbow and a God creation rainbow. I mean, it doesn't get
I see that. I love that artwork. I love all the things. Yeah, I'm all for rainbow decor and home decor. I geek out over that stuff too.
I'll dive in and just kind of tell you a little bit about my story and
yeah,
kind of why what I've been through and what I have to share about that, and then yeah, let's just play around and see where this goes.
I'm here for it.
Chose on that note, not just because I'm gay. I mean, yeah, obviously that too, but it was also from the quote, "From the greatest storm comes a very bright rainbow." So that quote really resonated with me. I'm claiming the brightest rainbow ever.
As Sunny said, my name is Erika Allison. I also go by Rev Erika. I am an interfaith, interspiritual minister. I'm also a queer person, identify as a lesbian. My pronouns are she and her. I'm an author. I wrote a book that is called Gay the Pray Away, and the subtitle is Healing Your Life, Love, and Relationships from the Harms of LGBT Conversion Therapy. So if you can't tell by the title, kind of the crux of my story is I grew up in Texas. I grew up in a very religious family, Christian church home. That was our life. It was, church, sports. That's pretty much what you do in Texas. You play sports, you go to church. And so when I came out at 18, my family found out I was gay at 18. The solution was this has to be cured, right? I need to be saved from this thing. So we did conversion therapy. I did conversion therapy, and we tried to pray the gay away and all those things that go along with it. And really, the book is not so much about what happened in that moment, in that experience. I talk about that, but really what the book is about and what I talk about and what my story is about is all of these 20 years after that, and what I've learned and what I've noticed and what I've discovered. And really, just to start tapping into some of those themes, the first thing I noticed was that I had repressed a lot of that experience and convinced myself that it didn't affect me. So the same way that it didn't work and I didn't become straight, like it didn't work, I just assumed, okay, well, it must not have harmed me either. It didn't fix me. It must not have harmed me. But I didn't really realize until I started seeing these things showing up in my life. Like I kept sabotaging relationships, and I could never really drop in. I kept feeling like, oh, there must be another person that's a better fit for me. This isn't the one, and kind of like some serial monogamy patterns. It also kind of showed up in my work, like the way I did my career. I also kind of hopped from career to career looking for what's this thing that's going to make me feel good about myself, right? Like what's going to fulfill me. And
yeah,
I found myself taking on careers that on the surface, they looked really great, very giving, very generous. And I started noticing some of those were overgiving in what I was doing. It wasn't actually a healthy balance of self-care with what I was putting out. I was putting out a lot more than I was getting back. And I came to realize that was all coming from this place of feeling not quite worthy. And I still needed to prove myself that I'm a good person, because these messages of conversion therapy that were programmed deep inside of me were like, you're not worthy, you're not lovable, you're not good enough. God doesn't love you as you are. You have to make up for that somehow. I needed to earn this love. And so, I didn't really realize how much those messages were in me still driving the boat. I kind of thought, oh, I'm in charge. I'm an adult now. I'm all good. But the decisions I was making were really coming from this place of not quite right, not quite worthy. And it was showing up in really not great ways. So the book goes on to talk about another theme, which is my healing with spirituality. So obviously I have some religious trauma going on from the background of being told that the way that God is interpreted by that particular religion is a God who can't love me for who I am. I've had to unpack that, and for a period of time it looked like going away from religion completely, but it always felt like, but I knew I was a spiritual being, and spirituality was always such a part of my life that I really couldn't get away from it. I try, you know, even if I wanted to, I couldn't get away from it. But I was really not letting myself drop into any of the practices, like prayer, for example. I mean, prayer was used against me. So my interest in praying was like, no, not interested in praying. That sounds terrible. And so I've had to come back to, okay, so what is my way of connecting to source, connecting to spirit, connecting to my inner knowing and my inner truth? What does that look like, and how do I access that place? And so there's been a lot of discovery in my life of spirituality and the authenticity of that for me. And so that comes up in the book too.
I really relate to that. And because, like, you know, I've had a lot of away relationship with religion and religious practices, and kind of like you, I had to cultivate my own relationship with my own higher power and my own understanding, and like have my own connection, because like things that we were taught in religion, like, were like, my queerness was poking holes at the very thing that we thought were true, right? And so it's like, okay, wait a minute, I exist, so I can't be that much of an abomination. I must be already approved on some level, right? And I was that like, does that seem similar to you? Like, what part of your path, like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem true. This is like, would you like to talk more on that? Do you feel comfortable going there?
Yeah, no, that's a huge one, because, you know, like, I really did take at face value the messages that religion told me for a long period of time. I mean, I didn't even think to question it. It just was like, everyone around me had the same belief system. It was literal, like, you know, the literal messages of the Bible is just what it is. It's the indisputable fact and truth. And so it really wasn't until, like, my turning point in this issue was after I'd been through conversion therapy. I went off to college in Austin, Texas. So I grew up in Dallas, but I went to college in Austin, which is, as we know, a little more liberal area of Texas.
Yeah, from what I understand, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was walking down the main drag. It's called Guadalupe Street, and there was a church that was the same denomination that I came from, but they had a rainbow flag outside. And I was like, wait a minute, how is this possible? Like, I was just told that these two things cannot exist. You cannot be both. And so and so I went into this church, and I was just like, please tell me, how is this out here? Because I just went through a very extensive process convincing me that this isn't possible. So what's going on? And, you know, what's interesting is it's not that they had some brilliant answer. It's not like they had it all figured out and the pastor was like, yes, let me tell you, God came down from on high and said, accept gay people. It wasn't that. The pastor was actually a little bit uncertain and was a little bit like, yeah, we don't really know. I mean, there's kind of mixed messages, and some interpretations say this and some interpretations say that. And, you know, it was in that moment where I realized this whole thing is fallible. You know, like, it's all just humans trying to interpret something that is beyond words, something that is more mystical than what our brain development can comprehend and make sense of. And so it was like, that was a big light bulb for me. And as soon as that light bulb went on, it's exactly what you said, Sunny. All of these other pieces of religion and faith, I started to, like, now I could question. Now the doors were open, and I could say, well, wait, you know, this part never made sense either. And now that I think of it, this part never really made sense either. And it was like, once that veil came off, it was all up for like, oh, I can really see what's going on here. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like, that's how it started for me too, because it's all from a place of power and control, really, and stripping us of our truth and teaching it, like, I don't want to have a fear-based relationship with my higher power, my own understanding. Like, that never made sense to me. And it never made sense, like, how, if we were such an abomination, why would we be in existence? Our whole queer community, you know? Like, that never made sense to me too. And so I really resonated with your journey and stuff, because, like, I think, you know, what's so interesting is, like, some people can find spirituality triggering, which I was surprised to find, but I can understand I can understand, because like there are some layered overlap nuances that are very similar in like the praying and feeling connected to a higher power, or to be even believing that, and that alone can be triggering, because there has been so much harm, and we can't gaslight that, deny that, sugarcoat that anymore, because like that was real. Like we exist, like whether Christians like that, we exist, we're here, we're
We're here
queer.
and we're queer.
There's nothing really they can do except like learn to love and accept that eventually, and how did you stumble into your spiritual practice and your spiritual path? I'm really intrigued by that, because like I know you and I love the rainbows
Yes,
and
totally.
pray. So I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, one of my favorite signs I ever saw at a pride parade. It was a sign somebody was holding up, and it said, "If gays are abomination, why are we so cute?" and he had this little pose like this. Why are we so cute? So
I love
I think
that.
yeah.
I mean, really, yeah, we're pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty hilarious. But yeah, so my journey back to spirituality and faith, it actually, for me, like the spiritual awakening, as I call it, came because of a relationship. And I was doing the serial monogamy thing, and I finally found the one, right? Like the person that I thought was the one. And it was interesting because this was the first time in my experience that the other person was not reciprocating, right? Like I was the one who had been hurting people up until that point, and like we were together until I realized like, oh, this isn't the right fit for me, I need to move on, and I would move on. But this was the first time that the other person was like, nope, we can't do this, can't be together. And it took me into such a pit of despair that it was the first time I was really grasping for things like beyond myself. And I mean, I've heard a couple of spiritual teachers say that there's two things that bring you back to spirituality, either really great love or really great pain, right? And so
that makes sense.
yeah, right. So in my case, it was just, I was in this place of just, I have no idea what to do. My heart was breaking, and I felt like, but if this person is the one for me, then what is life if I don't have this person? And you could probably already hear there were still a lot of codependency patterns too, because of conversion therapy and all of that. But I was really latching onto this person as the one that I needed to be whole. And so I'm in this like dark hole of I don't even know how I'm going to survive and go on. And it caused me to start reaching for things that I wouldn't have normally reached for, because I was just looking to make pain stop. Like, what's going to make my heart stop hurting? And it was in those moments I discovered a couple of resources right off the bat that helped me so much. One of them was Tara Brach, who is a Buddhist Vipassana teacher, Tara Brach. And she wrote a book called Radical Acceptance. She's written several books, but the one that I found in that moment is called Radical Acceptance. And so it's coming from a Buddhist perspective, but it's really talking about the way that we can come home to our refuge within ourself, as opposed to trying to find refuge in all these other places outside of ourselves. And that really, that's the only way that happiness and satisfaction and wholeness comes. And so reading that book, it allowed me to offer myself compassion, both compassion for the pain I was in that moment, but it even started to touch into some of the compassion that I really needed to give myself for what I had experienced earlier in life, which I hadn't allowed myself, because I really just said, no big deal, toughen up, that didn't hurt you at all, keep moving on. And Tara's book was like, no, you should really offer compassion for that, of what you went through, and the toll that took on your life. And if you haven't stopped to pause and offer yourself that love and compassion and tenderness, nobody else is going to do it for you. You got to do that. So it was huge. It was a huge influential book for me. And it actually was so influential that I went to find her in a live workshop. I wanted to see, who is this person? Where is she speaking? How can I go to a workshop with her? And I did. I found her speaking at a place called Kripalu, which is a yoga center. She was giving a weekend retreat there. And when I sat there, it was literally, believe it or not, the first time in my life I had ever meditated. I had just never done that. It wasn't part of my practice. Growing up in Christianity, nobody talks about meditation. In fact, if anything, they talk about it as something bad. So it was the first time, guided by Tara in this room of hundreds of people, that I started, I experienced meditation. And what I experienced in the meditation was so mind-blowing. It was like I got distance for the first time from my brain and all the activity. And I realized by like being out here and observing my brain, I was like, holy cow, I used to believe, like I believed everything my mind was telling me, and my mind was just dragging me around on these crazy roller coaster stories of like, we have to do this, we have to get this, grasp at this, grasp at that, like grab, and getting that space from my brain was like, wow, there's not a lot of peace and calmness there at all. It's just a lot of activity and a lot of busyness and a lot of churning and chaos. And I was able in that moment to just find such peace because I could observe that happening. I didn't have to change it. I could still be as mentally chaotic as I was, but I could see it from a distance that gave me just a little bit of peace and a little bit of calm to observe that, and then to really start to tend to that space. So that was my first like touch into spirituality, and it came from a Buddhist perspective. And so I was like, wow, this is weird. Like I grew up Christian, I kind of left that. Now I'm into this Buddhist thing, but each one of these religious pieces, it didn't quite fit. It's not like I then was like, I need to be a Buddhist, you know? It was almost like there's practices here that work for me. There are still parts of Christianity when I read people like Richard Rohr or others who look at Christianity from a mystical perspective.
Interesting.
Yeah, check out Richard Rohr if you don't know him. He's a Franciscan, spiritual teacher, author, and he has a center in New Mexico. But when I started touching into both of those resources, I was like, okay, there are some practices within both of these traditions that I like, but none of these traditions define who I am. Like, I don't feel like I fit in any of them. And that's what led me to start just like drawing the circle bigger of like, okay, what if I don't limit myself into a religious silo, but instead I say like, okay, this has helped my spirituality. This has helped my spirituality. Nature has helped my spirituality. Like there are these pieces that come from so many different places that have helped my spirituality. What if I start exploring and just following my heart to guide me to the things that are going to bring me into more and more love with myself and more connection to my kind of my higher source, my higher power, my higher self.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, because like, yeah, it's just, especially as a queer person, it's an interesting intersection to navigate the world in. And it's not like something we can turn on and off, or like we have one coming out experience and that's it. It's like an everyday thing. And like the way the world is built and the systems around us that were meant to like not have us exist, but like we're here, and like we need to find purpose and meaning in our existence and challenge the systems that are in place and like the teachings. And I really relate to that, because like, I mean, so many of us have been harmed by religion or another. And like, I also come from a Christian background as well. So I understand like the Christian perspective the most. And that was very harmful and frightening to me. And it was like for me, probably it sounds like it was similar to you, it was my queerness that really set me free and gave me permission, like between my queerness and my spirituality, like both gave me permission to be set free. And even before I knew I was queer, like I was like a late bloomer. I was not as young as you were. I was quite a late bloomer, but I was in high school though, when I was going to a Catholic high school. And I was already like not feeling good about religion. Even in high school, I'm like, yeah, no, this is not for me. Like for whatever, like it still hadn't occurred to me I was queer at the time. But yeah, I just been very painful. But like you, the more I expanded, the more I sought for answers, right? And like really a deeper connection and meaning behind all this. That's when I felt a little bit more loving connection with the higher power of understanding. And I see and feel more grace in the miracles, and I feel a more loving presence, ironically, more outside religion than ever. I've had like very similar. So like, I really relate to that part of your story, because like, it's been a little bit similar to me too. Cause like I stumbled into spirituality. I wasn't like particularly seeking it. I wasn't particularly seeking anything, but it came to me, and then it's like, okay, this seems really interesting and fascinating. I'm here for this. So
well, the meaning that you're talking about, I think is the key, because, when I was not in a relationship with religion at all,
Yeah.
you know, I was going through a lot of motions in my life and trying to find meaning in my relationships, trying to find meaning in my career. I was searching for meaning. And
Yeah.
it was interesting that as each of those things kind of failed to provide meaning, it left me like still searching, like, okay, so then what is the meaning of all of this? And it was that question of pursuing further and further, like, what's the purpose? Like, what's my purpose? Why am I even here? I thought it was to be this person's partner. I thought it was to be this type of, you know, career. But none of those were really defining me to the extent that it filled up who I was. And so it left me thinking like, okay, so what is it all about? And that it was that question that finally let me dabble myself back to spirituality. And I feel like the key here, like the reason I believe a lot of us in the queer community still struggle with touching into these conversations about spirituality and religion is because we're not separating the two. Like for me, it took me a long time, right, to separate, well, wait, religion and spirituality actually aren't the same thing. Religion is a system and it's a structure that has tried to give spirituality form and kind of like, you know, rules and bounds and all these kinds of things to contain the spirituality. That's what religion has kind of done. And so if you don't relate or agree with or fit into the box of the religion, if you don't realize that there are these two separate things, there's religion and spirituality, you may accidentally throw it all away at the same time.
So on that note, like what made you not give up on the pursuit of finding meaning in spirituality? Because like so many queer people, like you said, it's hard for a lot of us to like dissociate the two, and understandably so feel so discouraged and abandoned by religion and spirituality as a whole, and like it's a place of a lot of triggers and harm. So like what was that place in you that still found perseverance and like that you still had that faith, like, no, I want something bigger than this, like I'm seeking that connection? What made you look for that, so like have that faith and resolve? I'm curious if you're willing to share.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't something I was even really aware of. It's not like it's not like I was consciously saying like, okay, I need to persist and be resilient and then like find this thing. It was more that I was kind of saying no to all of it. And there was a part inside of me that was still saying, there's more to this. There's more than just going through life, like one social gathering to one work event to the next. Like it wasn't filling me. And the older I got, the more I realized there's still something missing here. It's just not all here. And so I think it took some time. I think it took some time to like try some different things. Like there was a period in my 20s where I was convinced that my religion was just love. And I was a lover, and my relationships were my religion in a sense. It took me a while to kind of unpack that and realize like, wow, I put a lot of pressure on relationships to try to fill a spiritual need in me as well. And things within me that were not that person's responsibility or that relationship's responsibility. They were more about me and my higher expansiveness and my higher self. And it took me a while to detangle that and realize like, wait, I'm never going to be in right relationship with another person or with relationships if I'm centering that whole thing as my core of my existence, because it's not. It's a part of my existence, but it's not a existence. And so it was like trial and error in a way. It was like, tried that, didn't fill me up, tried that career, didn't fill me up. What the heck's going to fill me up? And then starting to explore that, like, okay, so where do I feel something bigger and more meaningful? And like I said, you know, I've heard some wisdom teachers will say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of times a book would drop in my lap one way or another, and I was like, whoa, what the heck is this? And sometimes what was most fascinating is I would read things, especially when I read about Christianity from a mystical perspective. I would read these things and it would feel like I'd never heard that author before in my life, but the content felt so familiar to me. It was like I knew that at some level already, as this author was like talking about Christianity, but through a different lens. Like, that didn't mean that, it actually meant this. And when I would read those words, I'd be like, of course it means that. Like, that's what I've always thought it meant. They were just, not quite getting it right. And so there was something like really affirming about, having never even known that I was touching into mysticism, reading this stuff and being like, yes, that resonates so much with me. So it's just been a gradual discovery. And I think it's supposed to be like, I think in my 20s, I really wanted to have it all figured out really fast. And, obviously, because the more figured out you have it, the less you have to linger in pain. It doesn't mean you won't be in pain or have painful experiences, but you don't linger there. Like, I lingered in the pain for a long time as I was still, getting smarter. And even now, as I continue to evolve, I am continuing to grow in my ability to come back to my center and my source and bigger picture stuff. So it's all a journey, and it's all unfolding in like perfect timing, believe it or not. So